Hello there. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm happy to be here today. This is Wednesday, November 20th, and it's 10 a.m. And comments aren't appearing, which throws me off a little bit. Usually I show up and there's already comments. Okay, there they are. Okay, people can see me. Dominic, Nicole, can you hear and see me? Hopefully you're doing well. Just wanted to make sure everything's working. But yeah, happy to be here today. Last week was our annual charity auction, and the charity auction is now complete. And I'm, as always, I was overwhelmed by the generosity of the participants, the content creators, the winning bidders, the 10 winning bidders, and of course, Fulfill Right matched the highest winning bid, and Stonemaier Games matched the remaining winning bids for a total donation amount of over $35,000. Split between these 10 different charities. Oh, also we had the fancy new stone worm spin eggs on our website. So if you bought those during the charity auction, they contributed as well to the donation total. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things that we do at Stonemaier Games. It's a tradition that we started, I think, 12 years ago. And yeah, I really appreciate everyone who participated in any way, whether it was clicking a thumb, a like on the auction, or buying the eggs, or being a winning bidder, or one of the content creators we featured. Thank you for participating in that. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, that was our winning auction total. I'll go through the things I have in the subject line today. Actually, before I forget, I do want to do our chocolate of the day. Corel, who I work with mostly on graphic design stuff and Rolling Realms, Corel brought some wonderful, delicious Belgian chocolate to Essenspiel about a month ago, and he gave some of it to my coworker to give to me, and he picked out this fancy brand to give to me. He knows I like chocolate of all kind, but I do like fancy chocolate, and so my chocolate of the day for the last week has been Newhouse here. So Corel, thank you so much for giving me this delicious chocolate. I've really enjoyed it. I've been trying to savor it and spread it out, but it's tough because it's so delicious. So thank you so much for doing that. What are you treating yourself to today? To whether it's chocolate or something non-edible too. It can be any form of treat for yourself. Garrett likes my shirt. Yeah, thanks, Garrett. This is the farmer's market. I have to mention that I go to the farmer's market on the weekend here in St. Louis, and this is the farmer's market that I go to, the Tower Grove Farmer's Market. So if you're ever there and you see me wandering around, please say hi. I'd love to say hi to you. It's where I met one of my favorite people, Pete, who works at the whisk stand at the farmer's market. What else about this farmer's market? No, I was going to say Arcane. Arcane is in the subject line today because I'm really enjoying the new and final season of Arcane on Netflix. It's one of those shows where it's an animated show. I think it must be digitally animated. But there are moments when I'm watching it where I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like, I can't believe they made a moving image out of this because it just every I can't even describe it. Like it's just one of those shows where it is stunningly beautiful in big sweeping moments and even small moments. Like there was a moment where a character was eating an apple in an episode that I watched a day or so ago, and I was watching this. I was like, I don't know how they made this. This scene, this little moment of a character eating the apple is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Yeah, it's hard to describe, but if you haven't watched the show Arcane, I highly recommend it. It's an absolutely incredible show. It's on Netflix. It's the second season. The second season is the final season, and I think there are 3 more episodes to be released this coming Saturday for the second season. Dominic says, will I be playing any games for Thanksgiving? Yeah, in the U.S. here, we celebrate Thanksgiving. Dominic knows this, but I assume everyone around the world knows this, but maybe you don't know the date. But the date for Thanksgiving is next Thursday here in the U.S., and I will be playing some games for Thanksgiving. I know that I want to play the game. I usually bring some like more casual, large group games to Thanksgiving, and I think I might bring Flip 7, which I have played and really enjoyed, and I might bring The Gang. Also have played that, really enjoyed it, and then a new to me game that I haven't played yet, but I have it on my shelf, is Caution Signs. It reminds me a little bit of like So Clover meets Telestrations a little bit. There's a drawing element to it, but yeah, looking forward to playing those over Thanksgiving. Benjamin says, do you know when the Gears of Corruption Ironclad Edition will be re-released? I would say the right word is when the reprint will arrive. Thank you, Benjamin, for your excitement. I apologize that it's taken so long. It has taken a little bit longer than I wanted. And I'll tell you why, and I'll answer your question as well. In the first printing of the Ironclad version in particular, as the one that you mentioned, more mechs than I would like came detached from their base. It's a very easy fix. You can glue them back, but I can see that it's frustrating. You open a brand new game that you spent brand new expansion that you spent quite a bit of money on, and the mech is not attached to the base. And that's a problem. And so we worked significantly with our manufacturer over the summer to make sure that the reprint didn't have that problem. And it took longer than we thought. Hopefully it'll be worth the extra time. I still don't know for sure. But what this means is that the shipment isn't going to arrive in 2024. I thought it might. It isn't going to. And so, but it will arrive by mid-January 2025. So I'm sorry that there is a little bit more of a wait than we thought. I appreciate your patience. Hopefully people will still be excited to get it in at that time. But yeah, that's the current schedule for the Gears of Corruption Ironclad edition. Oh, Jonas says that he got the Wormspan pins. That was one of the other things we had featured on our website last week. Still is on our web store as well. He bought the Wormspan enamel pins for his wife's stocking stuffer. He says they're larger than I thought they would be. So awesome. Yeah, they are pretty big. They're pretty big enamel pins. Again, it's a category of product that I know almost nothing about, so I leaned heavily on my coworkers for this. And I think they did a great job offering me feedback to make a nice, good-looking final product. Nicole's treat. So I'm glad Nicole picked a non-chocolate treat. There are other types of treats too. She says she's treating herself to a solo game tonight of Shipwrights of the North Sea as her husband is visiting friends. It's going to be so good. That's awesome, Nicole. Yeah, I hope you have a great time playing that. Tonight is game night for me too. Not a solo game night, but tonight is a game night for me. And I think I'm excited. I actually want to try Caution Signs tonight if we can. I might try Diatomes, which my coworker Susanna offered to teach tonight. And there was one more game. There's one more game that might be on the table. I'm not sure. I did get to play Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth for the first time. Thanks to my friend Pete, the guy I mentioned from the farmer's market. We played it on Saturday, and I had a great time with my first experience with the game. I want to play it with Megan now because Megan loves Lord of the Rings, and I think she would really enjoy it. I think they did a wonderful job with Duel for Middle-earth. And maybe even more excited to work with Antoine Bauza because we now have Stonemaier Games owns the Tokaido brand, which Antoine Bauza is the designer of. So I'm really excited to hopefully work with him in the future on another Tokaido game in that line of games. Dominic says, does anyone have suggestions for language-independent party games? Good question, Dominic. Let's see if anyone has any good suggestions for that. Language-independent party games. I mentioned, I was going to mention Flip 7, but Flip 7 does have 3 cards in the game that are not language independent. They have instructions on them. For the most part, it is language independent. My favorite party games are the cooperative style, like So Clover, not language independent. Codenames, Blob Party. You need someone to say the word out loud. Blob Party might be the closest because in Blob Party, you need one person to read the words out loud at the beginning, but after that, everyone, if everyone can hear the word in their language one time per round of Blob Party, you're good. So that might be one to try. Don says, is there a new Span game in design and production? We love Wingspan and play them regularly. Thank you, Don, for saying that. I'm really glad that you enjoy those games, that you're enjoying those games. I haven't said either way. I appreciate you asking. I think it is a brand that we believe strongly in. In fact, my blog post this past what blog post? I did a blog post that I think was related to this just the other day. Not necessarily Wingspan, the world of Wingspan in particular. What was my blog post on Monday? Did a video about filler games. Post about social media ads. Okay, yeah, my post was about the cult of the new or longevity of the old. And the post was about the idea that at least 6, apparently, this is something that I heard from someone who works in video games, but I think it actually makes sense for digital games or for tabletop games as well, that at least 60% of game plays that happen on a regular basis are of games that are at least 7 years or older. Wingspan isn't quite there, but Wingspan is an older game at this point. It's been out since, 2019? Maybe even 2018, 2019, 2018, somewhere around there. Older game. And the idea of the post is when you have that type of game in your lineup, a game that people have fully embraced, where they play it on a regular basis, it gets played by, potentially millions of people from around the world on an ongoing basis. What can you do to support that game and help that community continue to thrive and feel like they are embraced by the company that publishes the game? And so promos, I talked in the post about, part of it is about potentially selling things within that line of games, creating something like Wormspan. Part of it is not selling stuff and just embracing the community in other ways. So long answer to your question, I think there is the potential for us to make something else in the world of Wingspan someday. But I don't give away spoilers on this livecast, so I wouldn't tell you if there actually was something coming up or not. Tony says, our group finished our Charterstone campaign last night. We really love playing that game. Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Congratulations on finishing. 12 games is a lot to ask for any one particular game, so I appreciate you getting through that. He says, we were wondering what your perspective is on how many people purchased the recharge pack. Were sales what you expected? Does anyone here continue to play Charterstone after completing the campaign? I think I have those sales numbers handy. Let me see what I have for units in print of the chart. No, I don't have it. I have Charterstone, but I don't have the recharge pack. I think we've sold around 10 to 15,000 recharge packs of Charterstone. It seems to me that there are people who like to play it once, people who have never played it, and there are people who want to play it again and again. Like, I've heard of multiple people who have played Charterstone not just twice, but 3 or 4 times. They've gotten multiple recharge packs and played it multiple times as a result. Actually, you can only do it. You need to buy the entire game again to play a second time, I believe. Yeah, because the first time you play, you just flip the board over and you play it again with the recharge pack. But yeah, Tony asked, does anyone who's watching, continue to play Charterstone after completing the campaign? Actually, that's a different question, Tony. You're right. I'm answering a different question, but Charterstone does allow you to continue to play the game, not as a legacy game, but just as a game, a standalone game after you complete the campaign. I think that's probably much less common, but maybe it happens from time to time, potentially for partial nostalgia reasons, like going back and being like, oh, we built this village, let's play it once a year, something like that. Austin says, speaking of beautiful art, I was speaking about that in terms of Arcane, the show Arcane. Austin says, I recently got a copy of Unconscious Mind, featuring some of the most beautiful board game art I've ever seen by Andrew Bosley and Vincent Dutrait. I agree. I mean, both of these are some of the best artists working in the business, and to combine their art in such a beautiful way in that game, really clever concept. I haven't played it yet, but I've seen photos of it. It looks incredible. Austin followed it up by saying, is there a board game with really beautiful art that stuck out to you? There is, Austin, and I actually did a video with my coworker Susanna earlier this year about our favorite art in games. Let me see if I can find it while we're talking live. I don't mind spoiling it here. If I can find the video about art in games. I'll search just for art, see what I can find. Here we go. Top 5 favorite tabletop game art. This video is from 6 months ago. And at the time, I picked the games Sleeping Gods. And these are games with beautiful art, and they somewhat represent the person that I picked. It represents the body of their work. So I picked Sleeping Gods, Ryan Lockett, Marvel Dice Throne, Manny Tremblay, Star Wars deck building game, Jake Murray and others. I really like just the classic fantasy flight art for Star Wars. Lost Ruins of Arnak. I think Lost Ruins of Arnak, they have a bunch of different artists who work on it. I don't know who did what, but I think it's really, really beautiful art in the game. And Everdell, Andrew Bosley, you mentioned him here. Andrew has worked on some games for Stonemaier Games as well, Viticulture World and Tapestry, and he is not only very talented, but also a delightful person to work with. One of the reasons that I decided to work with him on his epic world that he's creating right now, that we have a few games in the works on. Flo mentioned Dixit as a language-independent party game. Great pick, Flo. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would throw a slightly different version of it. I would throw Mysterium or Mysterium Park in there as well. That's language-independent. Johnny got to play disc golf adjacent to Johnny this past weekend. We had a big group of people, so I didn't get to play with Johnny's group. But Johnny says his wife and I are going to a cabin this weekend for our anniversary, and we're stopping by the Miniature Market grand opening on the way out of town. Miniature Market, they closed their flagship store here in St. Louis. They didn't close it. They wanted to move it. So they moved to a new location. They're opening it this weekend. And Johnny says, any fun 2-player games you recommend we pick up? Question for the group here, I guess, from Johnny. Johnny, I'd ask you this: what are a few of your favorite two-player games? Because it's a pretty broad category. Yeah, let me know a few of your favorite games to play with your wife. I guess it doesn't have to be a two-player only game, but a couple games that you enjoy playing with your wife, and I'll base my answer off of that. Jeremy says the backstory of Caution Signs is great. A game that I mentioned that I'm hoping to play soon. When I lived in Alaska, I loved the signs in Denali National Park that inspired the game. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that was there's a little bit of a story behind that, Jeremy. That's cool. Melissa says, in reference to my blog post on Monday, she says, I've evolved from cult of the new to longevity of the old. I like that. I like that a lot. I almost wish, so here's my little wish here, Melissa. I have two main gaming groups, plus Megan. Megan and I often play a game or two on the weekends. And one gaming group, we often play short, light games, often larger group games, and I'm delighted by that. I love that. Oftentimes they're newer games, not always. I have another group that plays heavier games, pretty heavy games in general, and oftentimes they are newer games. Not always, but oftentimes newer games. I almost wish I had a third gaming group where we only played like our favorites that we've played many, many times, and we still enjoy playing them. That would be kind of nice. I hadn't thought about that since you said that, Melissa, but I think I'd enjoy that. Let's see, just scrolling down, looking for questions here. There are some answers here. And here's a comment. I was wondering if this would come up, so I'm going to post this comment here. Isn't a comment that I exactly want to highlight, but I want to be transparent here. Steven says, surprised and disappointed that you approvingly let your video I saw posted last week go political. So Steven is referring to the end of the video that I posted this past weekend, which is about filler games. It had two guests on it. And at the end of the video, when we were recording it, I was a little surprised that that one of the guests had a political message. He did have a political message where he called for the U.S. to stop arming Israel in their war against Palestine. It was a surprise message, and we talked about it. And so obviously we decided we had a decision that we could make. We could cut that part of the video, or we could leave it in. And I decided that the message was not one of violence. It was a message of disarmament. And yes, it was political, but I don't stay out of politics. I mean, you watch these videos. My opinions about making the world hopefully a more joyful and better place are a part of what I write. They're a part of these live videos here. And yeah, it is a part of who I am and the way we run Stonemaier Games. Even we just ran a charity auction this past weekend, and many people could look at those individual charities and say, hey, these are supporting certain things over other things. But I decided, yeah, the message for any comment, including your comment here, Stephen, you have the right to express yourself in this way, just as Michael had the right to express himself in that way. He had a platform, he used it. As long as it wasn't a message of violence or hate, I think it was appropriate. I think it was appropriate for him to say. I think it was appropriate for us to leave it in. I know the issue itself is very nuanced and complex, and the video wasn't about that. And the regret I have is that I didn't timestamp it, and I have since timestamped it, because I thought that was, after hearing some people, comments like yours, who well, more constructive comments than yours, but some more constructive comments than the one that you just made, urged me to do that because I didn't want to catch people off guard at the end of the video, like I was caught off guard a little bit when Michael made that statement, just in case someone did not want to. If someone was there for the main content of the video, which was filler games, I could see why they would be caught off guard by the last 20 seconds of the video. So I added a timestamp so that someone could not watch that part if they didn't want to engage with the political portion of it. But again, Michael's right to use a platform to stand up for something he believes strongly in that is not about hatred and not about violence. Absolutely. I think that has every right remaining in the video, just as your comment will remain on this video, Stephen, because you're not advocating hatred. You're not advocating violence. You have a voice and you're allowed to speak up. So, but I do want to emphasize in general the idea that my opinions about trying to make the world a more joyful place, that is ingrained in every part of Stonemaier Games from start to finish. Whether it's these videos, these live casts, the videos I make about game design, the posts I make about entrepreneurship, I don't like the word. I think the word political is a little dismissive at times. In this case, it was specifically a political statement by Michael, so I'm not gonna dismiss that. But yeah, if you're looking to entirely avoid opinions about the world and about people and human nature and things like that, you have to avoid all the content that I make. Yeah. So anyway, Stephen, thank you for speaking up. You have a voice. You're allowed to express it, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. Long answer to a little comment that I thought might come up. Yeah. Julio says, our friendly little game store got a lot of great games that they don't usually stock in for the holidays. How do you choose buying between two games when you can only buy one? Ooh, good question, Julio. Yeah, that's a tough question. I think I usually try to think of it along the lines of which one am I more likely to get to the table? Which one am I more excited to get to the table soon? And usually that helps me lead me in one direction or another. And sometimes it's a question. Sometimes actually that those two might be in conflict with each other. Sometimes I might be really excited about a game, but I'm like, I don't actually think I will have people who want to play this as much as I do. And sometimes the reverse happens too. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I know Megan or someone in my group will be really excited to play this, but I'm not as excited about it. So I have to weigh those two things when I'm deciding to buy a game or not. Before I actually keep going, I do have a comment from Beverly here. She says she has her day off. Her treat is that she has Scythe on the table, one of the top 5 games she owns. Thanks for saying that, Beverly. I love the artwork, the play, the automa. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, Beverly. I'm glad you enjoy it. And I appreciate you saying why you enjoy it too. Yeah. I'll do a couple more comments. Then I have a few topics, including a question of the day for today. Trishul says, good to know about the Tokaido collaboration. Will you be offering pre-painted minis in a single box that comes with the Crossroads and Matsuri expansions? Great question. Couple of different things here. One, Stonemaier Games doesn't really do those big all-in boxes. We offer pieces of games. So we offer the core game and then expansions, so people can pick and choose exactly what they want. I've covered this topic before. I won't go into it, but yeah, that isn't something that we do. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to offer a single box. As for pre-painted minis, we are only making the standard retail version of Tokaido. We're not doing the deluxe version. No, we're not doing that either. Sounds like there are two things that you're hoping that I say we're doing. We're not doing either of those things. We're offering our version of the standard retail version of Tokaido, a single version that I think is beautiful aesthetically, even without the pre-painted minis. Much more cost effective too, for people who are buying it. So that'll be the version that we make, and we will, once retailers start to sell out of the original versions of the expansions, we'll probably make our versions of the expansions too. And in general, when I say our versions of it, it does not mean any change in gameplay unless we learn about something that is truly imbalanced in the games. But I think they're pretty well balanced and really well designed. It's just we're generally adding clarity to the rule book, and really actually we're adding less language independence. So we're using the icons that the original game has, but we're adding more text so that you don't have to try to remember what all those icons mean when they're in combination with one another. That's what I mean when I talk about our version of game. Beverly says, speaking of Crossroads, okay, so this is good to know, Beverly. We will look into what you said here. From what we could tell, Crossroads was in stock at many different places, but I could be wrong about that. So, Beverly, I will look into Crossroads availability, and maybe that will accelerate our decision to reprint it. Dan says, your dedication to your father last week really hit me. I lost my mom a few months ago, and I feel that grief so much. Is there anything in particular that helped you in that first year? Dan, thanks for sharing that. My heart truly goes out to you for losing your mom a few months ago. Yeah. I don't. Obviously, I'm still processing my own grief for my dad. I probably will be for a long time. It helped me to write about it. That was part of what helped me. I wrote on my blog a few times, usually in the occasion of like, oh, this is my first birthday without my dad, or his first birthday without my dad. That helped. And the other thing, I don't want to get too caught up in a beautiful question here that I will struggle to answer, but it was helpful for me after a time, not right away. It wasn't helpful right away, but after a time to visit his grave. Not that it wasn't helpful at the moment that he was buried, but yeah, that was really helpful. Thanks for asking about that, Dan. Yeah. Some two-player recommendations here for Johnny. Merlin's Manor mentions Paris, la Cité de la Lumière. Thank you, Merlin's Manor. I'm not familiar with that one. Jacob mentions Naishi. I've never heard of Naishi, a dueling tableau builder where half the tableau is hidden to the other player. The action system is also a unique restriction to work around. That's cool. I've never even heard of that one, Jake. Thank you for recommending that one. Thank you, Paige. I mentioned one perspective a second ago from Stephen, and Paige offers a different perspective. And Paige, you have a voice. I appreciate you speaking up as well. Paige says, hearing a call for the end of the genocide in Palestine at the end of the video meant a lot to me, and I appreciated hearing it, as too often I feel like board game channels shy away from politics. So Paige, thank you for sharing that other perspective on this. I really appreciate that. And I think Paige, what Paige mentions here is an end to violence. And I think that is something that I very much support personally and professionally. For a very nuanced issue. I know it's a very nuanced issue, but I hear that's what Paige is calling for, and I support that, Paige. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so Johnny's answering my question about his favorite games to play with his wife. He says Azul, Charterstone Campaign, I like that. Can't Stop, something not very heavy like Twilight Struggle, but we enjoy directly competitive games. I struggled a bit with Twilight Struggle myself, but I really enjoy the game Watergate, which I personally think does what Twilight Struggle set out to do in a much more streamlined way, but still with some great tug-of-war mechanisms. So, Johnny, if you enjoy the idea of Twilight Struggle, but if you found it too heavy, I'd recommend Watergate as a great two-player game. Can't Stop, a little bit of Push Your Luck and Can't Stop. Might recommend Spots. I think Spots is a delight, even at 2 players. And it does scale up to other player counts as well. I think it goes up to 4. And what else am Megan and I really enjoyed? I think as a really light game, Hierarchy, I think, is a delight, but that's very light, very small, very short. Star Wars deck building game. I love Star Wars deck building game as a 2-player game. I think it's primarily designed as a 2-player game, although you can scale up with multiple copies. Really, really enjoy that as a 2-player game. And you mentioned Azul as a more abstract game for 2 players. I mean, my favorite Azul is Azul Summer Pavilion. I think that probably works as a 2-player game too. Oh, James says Hanami Koji. Hanami Koji is a great pick as a 2-player game. Love Hanami Koji. The question of the day. I've asked several questions out loud from that people have asked, but I haven't asked my question of the day today. Just a little one. I want, for coming into the end of the year, in fact, someone asked, Don, I believe, asked about the world of Wingspan earlier. I'd like to film a Sunday video, talking about these Sunday videos, top 10 lists, top 5 lists, things like that. I'd like to film a end of the year video that is related to Wormspan and Wingspan. But I don't know what to film yet. I've already done videos about those games where, like, if you like Wingspan, you'll also like these games, recommending games connected to Wingspan. Same for Wormspan. I've done that, so I don't want to do that again. I've done Tales from Production for both of those games. My initial thoughts, I'm open to ideas. If I did a video about Wingspan and Wormspan, is there anything that you'd like me to cover in it as I prepare for this potential video? One thing I thought about doing is a video about, like, the most frequently asked questions about these games, specifically in terms of, I don't know, like FAQ style questions, the things in our FAQ that people seem to stumble over a little bit about the games, just clearing them all up in one place in one video that someone could watch instead of having to read through the FAQ and look through Board Game Geek, things like that. So that is what I'm considering. If you have any other suggestions, let me know. I'm happy to consider that. That is my question of the day today. So Paige is continuing part of her comment from before. Paige says, board games so often glorify themes of colonization and other problematic topics. I think it's important and relevant to the hobby to talk about real life colonization. And Paige, I think this is another great point when someone says leave politics out of board gaming. In so many different games that we play, including Watergate, which I just mentioned, politics are a part of the game. Like again, I think politics is almost a term that diminishes it a little bit too much, but just like world issues, like real world issues, are often a part of games. Even science fiction and fantasy games, those issues are a part of those games as well. So I agree. I don't think those topics are separate from board games, nor do I think they should be. I think fictional mediums like board games, like books, like movies, are wonderful platforms to bring up those sorts of topics in a way that we can think about and talk about. I see a slightly spoiler question I'm going to skip over. So I'm not going to answer that spoiler question, but Nathan, I do appreciate you asking about it. Brian says, so someone had a question about, Julio had a question about deciding between two games at a game store. And Brian's answer for it, he says, I often go with, does this spark joy when comparing between purchases? Usually one rises to the top. I like that. Taking the Marie Konda? Is that what her name is? That approach. So LB Jeeper says a Tokaido Essential Edition with the expansion would be pretty nice. So I will say we considered that for Tokaido. We're not doing that, but we did consider it. But it would have raised the price beyond what I think people really want to play for Tokaido as a gateway game. And so we are releasing a Stonemaier version of Tokaido, which is just the retail version of Tokaido with a clarified rulebook and some text on the back of the tiles, little modifications I've talked about on various blog posts. And then we will release the expansions separately. I guess it is possible we will combine the expansions into a single expansion, maybe if the cost is very, very reasonable. But yeah, I don't know yet. Let's see. Greg says, you may have said it before, but does the acquisition of Tokaido also involve the sister game Namiji, and will Stonemaier offer it too? So yeah, we bought the entire Tokaido brand. We acquired the entire brand, which does include Tokaido Duo, includes the expansions, it includes the metal coins, it includes Namiji, includes everything, the entire Tokaido brand. I would say our next plan, unless we find out something about Crossroads that we need to act faster on, our plan next is to work on Tokaido Duo, a Stonemaier version of Tokaido Duo. And then after that, Namiji. All three games, I think, are excellent. And just a matter of waiting for the current stock that distributors and retailers have of those games to sell through before we bring in our versions of those games. Julio has an answer for Dan as well. He says, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Julio lost his mom in February. I've been struggling as well, but what helps is having other people that love me and that I love around me. Thank you for sharing that, Julio. I really appreciate that. Here we go. I don't usually promote specific other sellers, but we aren't selling these products yet, so I'm okay doing this. So Austin says that Boardtopia has the Crossroads expansion and Amazon has Tokaido Deluxe, which includes the Crossroads expansion. And I should say that all existing Tokaido content will be compatible with all Tokaido content that we create. We're trying to match everything that you need to like kind of shuffle together. We are matching those component types and things like that. Everything that you don't need to shuffle together, we might be upgrading to slightly better card stock and things like that. Sean mentions a newer game, Kelp. Kelp is a really, Johnny, yeah, so this is Johnny's question about two-player games. Kelp is a really, really lovely game, beautiful game. I have my copy. I've played it as the octopus so far, but not as the shark yet. Tony also mentioned Spirit of the Wild. Joseph is talking about his treat of the day. He says, Lindt having just returned from Switzerland. We actually walked past a Lindt store in Japan that we had to resist a little bit because it was just Lindt chocolate, so many Lindt chocolates. I resisted it because it wasn't Japanese chocolate, and I was, I can get Lindt chocolate in the US, but it was a very tempting store to go in and get that chocolate. I see Corey popping in to say hi. Let's see. Okay, Merlin's Manor says the Paris game I mentioned is a two-player only game played in stages where you each have a color and you place polyominoes in stage 1 and then try to build on your color in stage 2. Oh, that's cool. Building up on what you created. That is really neat. Thanks for sharing that. Oh, wow. Brian says that I mentioned the Star Wars Equity game. Brian says his wife and him hit 100 plays this past weekend. Brian, I'm curious, having played 100 times, have you noticed any patterns emerge? Anything like I don't really care if there's a faction that is stronger than the other. I have fun playing the deck building game when I win or lose. But have you found that there is any faction that wins more often than the other? So far in playing the new version, the Clone Wars version, against any other faction, including the base game, I have not seen the Separatist lose. So I think they're pretty powerful. It is fun to play as them. It's also fun to play against them and try to beat them. So I'm curious if you found any patterns like that. Melissa mentions two-player game Hive. Great two-player game. Very easy to travel with. Don says, love Wormspan. I hope you give it enough of a chance. We did modify the rules a bit for two-player. Curious about that, Don. What two-player modification did you make to Wormspan? Let's see. Aaron says, have you considered doing a video with the Automa Factory discussing how the solo mode for Wormspan came to be? I appreciate the suggestion. We haven't done that, partially, maybe largely because there is, at least there should be for all of our games, there's at least one design diary post about that it already exists. So if you look near the end of the design diaries for Wormspan, you'll probably see a post about that. That did remind me about something else, though. I'm going to quick note. Let's see. Trishul says, years ago, Libertalia offered a surprisingly good two-player experience with less chaos and more getting into the opponent's mind. I look forward to exploring how the Stonemaier version changes the two-player experience. So, Trishul, I should differentiate a little bit here between what we did for Libertalia and what we did for Tokaido. Tokaido, we did not change the gameplay at all. We were happy with how the game played at all player counts with Tokaido. We didn't make any gameplay changes at all to Tokaido. Libertalia, as much as I love the game, I thought that it needed some work to modernize it a little bit more. So we changed a lot of things in Tokaido. I worked heavily with the designer. So Tokaido was Libertalia was a new addition, a completely new addition to the game. Sorry, I keep mixing them up. Tokaido is just it's pretty close to a reprint with the most work that we put into revising the rules and making the rules a little bit clearer. For a game where if you know Tokaido, you just know the rules, you don't think about it. The rules were surprisingly kind of clunky to get through and to make sense of. Valerie says that she enjoys Onitama. Beverly says, Beverly, thank you for mentioning this. This is the other big difference. Our version of Tokaido has the solo mode, has an Automa solo mode. So that is the one big new thing that's in our version of Tokaido to make it, instead of a 2 to 5 player game, it is a 1 to 5 player game with an Automa solo mode. And so we will hopefully have a design diary about that at some point in the future as well. So it will, Beverly, yes, that is included in the box. That is the one big new addition. Hilda also says that she unfortunately lost her dad in 2021. It helped her to dive into something creative. I also found comfort. This is Hilda speaking. I also found comfort in doing things my father enjoyed. Made me feel like he was still here. I really like that. And that really resonated with me too. Yeah. I thought about my dad in Japan. We went to, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but we went to a castle in Japan in Kanazawa, really beautiful castle that's in the process of being restored, although it looks great as it is too. And the woodworking inside the building is stunning and beautiful, and it uses the traditional Japanese method of not using nails. It kind of slots together the wood to stay together. And yeah, I thought of my dad a lot while doing that because my dad loved woodworking. He could have spent hours walking through this building, looking at the exhibits, like just looking at like the joints on the wall. He would have been fascinated by that. So while woodworking isn't a hobby that I have really engaged with, my connection to Hilda's comment is that it made me think of my dad, and that meant a lot to me to do that. I don't know if it helped with my grief at all, but it felt good to think about my dad. Yeah. Board Gamer says, I received their Wingspan Stone Eggs yesterday, and they were beautiful. We wanted to table one of those 2 games instantly, but you played with Expeditions with Years of Corruption instead. Well, Stonemaier game hit your table. I'm happy to hear that. Hope you had fun with it. Trishul says, did you visit any part of the traditional Tokaido route while in Japan? I don't know if it's exactly part of the route, but in Tokaido, the game Tokaido, there are these cards that have snow monkeys on them, snow monkeys bathing in a hot spring, and I went to that place. They weren't in the hot spring at the time because it wasn't quite cold enough. But yeah, I went to this, I think it's Jido Kudani. I believe that's it, Jido Kudani, the snow monkey park in outside Shibu Onsen, which is outside Nagano. I did go there and saw 2 snow monkeys there. It was pretty incredible. Flo says, I love how Wingspan focused on nature, but Wormspan takes a fantastical turn. What inspired the shift to dragons instead of something like dinosaurs? The dragon theme is awesome. I'm just curious. Great question, Flo. So really, honestly, it came down to dragons versus dinosaurs. And we had a big debate about it with my coworkers and shareholders, and even some localization partners weighed in. And ultimately, we decided that we wanted to go with dragons. It was pretty close, though. It could have gone one way or the other. I think maybe the main reason is that we wanted, because we were using, I guess we wanted to focus on the idea of things with wings. And some dinosaurs do have wings, but not all dinosaurs. But it was very close because dinosaurs laid eggs. Many of them, I think most of them, maybe all of them, they laid eggs. So the similarities were definitely there. I think one other part, well, I want to say that part of it is that it felt like there are enough dinosaur-themed games already out there, but there are also plenty of dragon-themed games, so that probably wasn't it. But I think most of it, the decision largely came down to partially gut feeling and partially things with wings. Yeah. Dominic says, can you talk about your favorite art from Wingspan and Wormspan? Maybe interview the artists on the process. So talking about like a video about Wingspan and Wormspan. I like that, Dominic. I'll make a note about that. I think the artist might be tough to have the artist join me for that interview, but maybe. But yeah, the art, my favorite art. I think that could be fun to do. Along with, maybe it could accompany an FAQ a little bit. Siba says, could you talk a bit about solitaire games? Why Stonemaier would or would not publish a solo-only game? I feel it's a side of the market that is overlooked in general. Great question. Yeah. So in general, the rule for Stonemaier Games is that all of our games, with the one exception being on the wall behind me, Smitten, all of our games must play from at least 1 to 5 players. So for that reason, we wouldn't publish a solo-only game. However, having solo in our games is really important. And we work with Automa Factory to do that because we estimate around somewhere between 5 to 10% of people play games primarily solo. And so we want to, that's a big chunk of the audience, and we want to appeal to that audience. And we work with the best in the business with Automa Factory to make it. So that is really why we want to do it. We want to include more people into our games, and a bunch of people play solo. Yeah. Okay, so Don says he has some modifications when he plays a Wormspan 2-player. He deals 6 dragon cards, 6 cave cards, and they keep 4 of each. Start with 8 silver coins and 4 food resources. Okay, so just starting with more stuff. In a game, and this is a neat mention here, because in a game with a fair amount of positive player interaction, if you have fewer players, you're going to get a little bit less of that free stuff from other players. So I can see the justification for starting with more stuff. GMoney14 says, are there any common rules of a game that you consistently forget about, but remember later that would have helped you during the game? I know there are. I'm forgetting what they are right now because that's part of the question. But there certainly are things like that. Do you have one in mind? Do you have something in mind that you're thinking of? Hilda says her father was a woodworker for over 30 years. Crying along with you today. Thank you, Hilda. Yeah, hugs to everyone missing someone today. I appreciate that. It came up last week, as last Wednesday was my dad's birthday. Yeah, it's still coming up this week. I appreciate you all thinking of our parents, the ones we love who aren't with us anymore. Yeah. G-Money says, okay, so this is his answer to the question, or their answer to the question. I always forget the option in viticulture that you can sell grapes if you're short on money. That's interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that it's printed there on the board. I try to avoid things that players just have to remember in general without giving them a visual reference. But yeah, for something that I hardly ever do that as well in viticulture, so I forget to do it, even though the board is telling me I can do it. Marlene says, hello and welcome back from Japan. There's been some talk in the Stonemaier Games Discord about how some of us would enjoy a Stonemaier Games deck of cards with art from the various games. Is that something that you would consider? Interesting question, Marlene. It isn't something I would say that's on the top of my list, because playing cards in general, there are plenty of them that exist out there. But if it is something that people would be interested in us making at some point, I would certainly consider it, especially if it's something that could benefit the artist. Yeah, I would be happy to consider that at some point in the future. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see about that. It's a neat idea, a neat way to feature artists. It could be a neat April Fool's, like we do our real April Fool's products, and that could be one. Because it is a little outside what we normally do, but it could be a fun thing to do and to celebrate the artists who make our games. Let's see. Nick 1700 says my main weekly game group recently stopped meeting. Too many conflicts and not getting a quorum. I'm trying to find a new group, and it's been difficult. Any suggestions? That is tough. I empathize with that. It's tough that to reform that group after it kind of falls apart over time. I heard this happened for a lot of people after the pandemic or during the pandemic. I think the key is to, and I'm saying this, it's easier said than done, but to put yourself out there in different groups that in the hopes of finding people that you can form that group with. Meetup.org, playtesting groups in the area, often found through meetup.org, local conventions, meetups at game cafes and game stores. In the hopes, this is what I think I would do if I ran into this situation, in the hopes of finding some people that I really connect with at those places who maybe want to play games outside of those environments if you're hosting or if they're hosting, things like that. So that's what I think I would try to do. Has anyone else run into that and found any success in doing something like that or doing something different? Let me know in the comments here. Joshua says sticking to one type of art like Wingspan only could be cool for a deck of cards, though there is a lot that goes into designing a clean-looking standard poker deck that can sometimes be lost. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Joshua. You can't just plop the art into it and hope that it works. And we have a lot of different art styles, and so they might clash a little bit with each other if we did that. Julio says, thank you all for the shared grief. It might sound weird. It does not sound weird. I'm glad you said this. It's good to know that I'm not the only one grieving at any given time. My condolences to everyone on this sad boat. It's well said. I think some of the most powerful, I agree. I just want to say I agree with you, Julio, and I don't think that's weird to say at all. Trishul says, have you considered a deck of vine art cards for viticulture that helps us recognize and learn about various vines, similar to what Wingspan did for birds? Oh, that's interesting. I haven't considered that, but that's a neat idea. Yeah, the art on the vine cards in viticulture is pretty similar. They aren't all that different. They don't have fun facts on them, things like that. But yeah, that's a neat idea to explore that a little bit. Yeah, I like the idea. I don't know if we'll do it, but I appreciate you sharing the idea. Here, Corey has some advice. Corey is actually a great ambassador in the West Virginia area for bringing people into groups and bringing people into gaming. He says, check with libraries, game stores, and bookstores for ongoing groups. If you're not able to find it, you could try to start a group. This is Corey's advice. Try to start a group and start advertising it. It can start very slowly and feel fruitless at first, but eventually, if you build it, they will come. I like that, Corey. And Corey is a testament to this. I think this is exactly what Corey did. Moody Magic Maple says, just want to say your videos inspired me to start working on my own games, and I have my first blind playtest today. Ooh, that's awesome. Maybe a little nerve-wracking too, but congratulations. I hope that goes well. And by goes well, I just want you to be prepared for it to not go well, but that is a form of it going well. Just like getting it to the table is a huge step. I think that's awesome that you're putting yourself out there. And yeah, just be ready for it to not play out on the table the way that it has played out in your head or even solo. And that is okay. That is part of the playtest process. I had that happen. In fact, I had that happen yesterday. I playtested a game with Megan yesterday. It did not go particularly well. It was okay, but it didn't go great. And that was great. That was great to have that experience on the table so I can learn from it. So I hope you learned something from this playtest, and congrats on getting your game to the table. That's awesome. Melissa mentions for Nick's question, is there a subreddit for your city? I found a lot of members that way. And that reminds me, Melissa, someone recently pointed out that on Board Game Geek, there's a way to find players based on their location. So there is I don't have it handy right here, but I linked in a recent blog post to a Board Game Cove video about how to do this. So a couple different, I have to search a little bit for how to do this, but there is a way to look on Board Game Geek for people who have specified their location and being open to playing with other people. That is on Board Game Geek. I'll throw out a few quick topics at the end here, just little things from my life. I watched a couple movies over the past weekend. Watched Despicable Me 4, which was good. Watched the movie Woman of the Hour, which was really good. Not quite what I expected. It's a movie on Netflix, filmed, directed and starred in by Anna Kendrick. And it's about a true story about a woman who appeared on a dating show where one of the three men on the show was actually a serial killer. The movie is a little bit more about the serial killer side of things and less about the game show than I expected. But Anna Kendrick adds a really great, I would say actually an important perspective to it about essentially about believing victims. And I think that's a really important message. But yeah, highly recommend that movie if you're in the mood for something pretty intense, because there is a serial killer in this movie, as advertised in the movie. Played some disc golf over the weekend, went to the farmer's market, as I mentioned here, and went to a friend's wedding. I think this is the first conservative Jewish wedding that I've ever attended. I've attended a less conservative Jewish wedding a long time ago, a friend's wedding, and this was a fairly conservative Jewish wedding, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful to experience. I first time for me, and very happy for my friend Adam to be happily married. Congratulations, Adam, on that. I mentioned that we're watching Arcane right now. We're also watching the show The English Teacher, a new show, watching Survivor, of course. And I am starting to watch, I know I'm like a year late, but I'm watching the show Wednesday now. It's a show that Megan really watched and enjoyed and thought that I would enjoy. So we're watching that together now, rewatching it for her. What else? Oh, the last topic on this video that I forgot to mention. Megan and I have tentatively decided to go on the Board Game Geek at Sea moving game convention that's on a cruise to Norway next summer. It's not official yet. We've basically made the deposit, which we can get back as late as mid-April if we decide against it. But I wanted to throw that out there today. I'll mention it in a few other places as well. But we have tentatively decided to do this. And so if you would like to play games with me on a cruise ship for a few days and hopefully experience some great parts of Norway as well, that's a big reason that we're going on the trip. It looks like a really amazing place to visit. Feel free to consider signing up for this cruise. This is Board Game Geek at Sea, happening this summer. And I want to put this caveat in there. I know that cruise ships are problematic in certain ways, right? They're not great for the environment, basically. I think they are working towards being more sustainable, and Board Game Geek is aware of this, and they said that they even are like, this is something that they push for cruise ships. I think they're working on it. They also, maybe they're not the best part of tourism either, but tourism is pretty important to many different countries. And I think even in its weaker forms, it can be important to these countries. But overall, I'm putting those disclaimers on it to say that I have never done this before. I've never done a cruise before. I'm going to try it. I want to see if it is a good experience, both personally and in terms of how I see the impact on tourism and the environment, things like that. So it's new to me. I'm going to try it out and see how it goes. And so I understand I understand that there are different ways to experience the world, is I think what I'm getting at. And a cruise ship might not be the best way to do that. But it is a way to do that. And so I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it and see how it goes, see if it's, or I think I'm going to try it and see if it's a good fit for me to occasionally try when I want to see different parts of the world and different cultures, and hopefully play games as we move across the sea. Like, that's pretty incredible. We're going to get together in a big room and play games with people from around the world. So that seems fun to me. Anyway, that's my big disclaimer caveat that to maybe consider. But yeah, if you want to think about that, Board Game Geek at Sea, Norway, summer of 2025. I'm not 100% sure. I've made a deposit, but I think there's, for us to take that plunge and make the deposit means that there's probably a pretty good chance that we might do it. Let's see, a few different comments that I missed here while I was talking. Melissa says, it's easier to make friends out of board gamers than make board gamers out of friends. Yeah, that's generally true. Although, Melissa, to be fair, there is also the potential for someone who is curious about games, existing friends who don't already play games. Maybe they could be Nick's new gaming group. A board gamer says, will you be coming back to Virginia for Thanksgiving next week? And if so, will you be popping into Unplugged Cafe again? I think there is a good chance I will be visiting my hometown of Richmond, Virginia next week. Depends on weather a little bit because it's a drive for us, but there's a good chance we'll be doing that. And I am hoping to pop into Unplugged Cafe again if we do that. That is a game cafe that is very close to where some of my family members live. And so I think we haven't really made plans specifically about what we're doing. And again, I'm not 100% because if the weather is really bad next week, I'm not going to make the drive. But there's a very good chance that will happen, and a very good chance we'll go to Unplugged Cafe if we are back there. Aaron has a mazel tov for my friend who just got married, and he says, may their memories be a blessing for those who have passed. I appreciate you saying that, Aaron. In fact, even at my friend's wedding, it was a little tough to see because I was there with a friend of mine and the friend who got married. All of our dads have passed away. All of our mothers are still around, fortunately. But yeah, three of us. Actually, and even a fourth friend, my fourth friend at the table too. All of our dads, all of our moms are alive and doing well, which is wonderful. But all of our dads have passed away. Something that I would hope not to have in common with people, unfortunately. But that is the case there. Oh, cool. Well, a couple different things. Nicole says, congrats on committing to your wonderful sea adventure. Not quite committing, but getting closer, at least deposit. Corey says, I'll be on the Meeples at Sea Cruise in April as staff. Oh, that's cool. That's fun. Merlin's Manor says, cruises are fun. I've never been on a board game cruise, but would like to sometime. The way I think about it is it's like a hotel that's moving around, right? And so it seems like a great place to play games while we're on our way to Norway and our way from Norway back to the UK. And Tony says, we'll anxiously await a picture of you playing Libertalia Winds of Galecrest on deck. Yeah, we'll also play mini games out on the windy deck, but maybe we'll try to get a photo of that if we have a chance to do it. Oh, I like this. This is a wonderful sentiment to end the podcast. Trishul is going to call his dad after this podcast. I know everyone has different relationships with their parents, but Trishul, I love that you're doing that. Yeah. I guess the message is appreciate the people and pets in our lives while they're here. Yeah. And Corey mentions a good disclaimer for those traveling on 64, potentially over Thanksgiving. Be careful on 64 between the Huntington and Charleston area. Construction has been ridiculous. Well, that's a problem because that is the route that we usually take, Corey. Yeah, good to know. I'll see if there's another route around it that we can avoid that. Yeah, thanks for the heads up. Aaron also has one last comment here. The one time I went on a cruise, I ended up watching a bunch of films I never saw before, like Citizen Kane, Rain Man, and more. It was pretty great. That's great. Yeah, that's a vacation. It's your vacation time. You do what you want, and that is great. Anyway, thank you all for joining me today for, again, another emotional podcast, and one also with some powerful messages from people who use their voice to speak up in a platform in a constructive way. I love that. Even if I don't necessarily agree with what you have to say, as long as your voice is not about hatred or violence, you have a voice on my platform, or on our platform at Stonemaier Games. So yeah, thanks for joining today. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. So hopefully some happy gaming, some good treats today, whether they're gaming treats or food treats. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Take care.